Well, thanks everybody. I've got a lot of slides, so some stuff I'll go through quickly, but I'm trying to make it as interesting as possible. As Peter said, it was originally going to be about tournaments, and I thought, well, let's talk about the early days. Then maybe we'll have another short section about the move from the River U of R campus to Pittsford. Talk a little bit about Dr. Williams and the trees and the Hill of Fame, and then I'll give you a good history of the various tournaments that have been hosted there. So I think the only thing that's going to be difficult is packing 125 years into 1 hour. So here we go. Fasten your seatbelts. Here we are. This is the current clubhouse. And this is the oldest image we have of the original clubhouse along the river. This being the clubhouse without the front porch. Here you have the Ford Street Bridge and the city of Rochester in the background. But I think the boater is very appropriate because one of the things that people really enjoyed about the original location was the river and the ability to canoe or sail on the river. Here we have the clubhouse. This is approximately 1902, 1903 photograph. The clubhouse was fairly rudimentary. There were kerosene lamps, no hot water. The men would change their clothes in the barn you see over at the extreme right. And the rules were fairly rudimentary as well. No cursing, gambling, or smoking in the dining room. The club was founded in 1901. It is not the oldest club in Rochester. That's the Country Club, which was founded in 1895. It was founded by approximately 25 business and professional individuals, and they came together. The initiation was $25, and the dues were $20 a year plus $5 for every additional family member. Those dues would go up substantially, somewhat over time. Yep. So this is I like this. This is an early photograph of some players on the course at the river campus. And one of the things, I don't know you can really see it, but obviously he's on the putting green. Gentleman here is holding a bamboo flagstaff, but if you could see the club he has, it has loft to it. And back then it was very common for the putter to be lofted because take a look at how rough the grass is at that time. So this is another photograph from approximately the same area. You can see it's a little rough, but this, I suspect, the white is sand. And the reason it's sand is that prior to wooden tees that we use today, wood or plastic tees, what people would do to tee up a ball would be to take a little bit of sand that would be in a box near the tee and sprinkle a little water on it so they could form a little pyramid, put the ball on top, and then that's what they use for tees. So it's very reasonable that that's why that sand is there. And that, by the way, that's where the term tee box comes from, is the box that would be at the tee that you would use to make a tee. This is one of my favorite pieces. To me, this is a little microcosm of a lot of golf history. This is a scorecard from 1903. And a couple of things jump out at me. Number one, it's for 2 players, not 4. Today we think of 4. Back then, and I think that this reflects on match play versus stroke play. Match play was much more common, or alternate shot was much more common than stroke play as we think of it today. The other thing that strikes me is that the holes are, the name of the hole is much more dominant than the number. And part of that reason, I believe, is that although we think of 18 holes because St. Andrews was 18 holes, the reality is that 18 holes wasn't officially standardized until the early 1920s. And so, you know, if you said, well, such and such happened on the 18th hole, you know, today you would know that that was the last hole, whereas that wouldn't necessarily be so every place. And so a lot, and this is true of a lot of clubs, and today at Oak Hill, all the holes have a name, although the number is much more prominent. But the real killer, or interesting thing, is the fact that they're playing to bogey and not to par. So bogey was the original, and it's a much longer story than we have tonight, but it was through the development of the handicap system, but people would play to bogey. And then as players got better and better, in the late teens, it was shifted over to par. So, but I think that's just, to me, that's, you know, this is the kind of stuff historians enjoy. Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting shot. This is an aerial view of the original location along the river. Up there, you see Elmwood Avenue going across the river, and then down through here is St. Paul Boulevard, and you can see the course. This is the clubhouse, and those four things. Those are tennis courts, and so the clubhouse was right here, and then you can see the course with the various bunkers and other hazards along the way. Yeah.
Was it only 9 holes?
It was only 9 holes. In 1911, they added a second 9 holes. Yep. This is the great picture. This was before the Mount Morris Dam was built. You know, and that's a Cunningham, which is an automobile that was made in Rochester. But in the distance, so this person's probably going down St. Paul. Oh, that's the clubhouse in the distance. Now, this was from 1901 moving forward. The club was very successful. It brought on a lot of members, and so in 1911, this clubhouse was built. It had a dining room large enough for 450 people. It had 18 guest rooms for visitors. A wraparound porch that they could open their French doors and have dinner out on the porch or have dances out on the porch. And then from 1911 for the next decade, this is what everybody enjoyed. And then about 1922, George Eastman, the leadership of the University of Rochester, which was then located on Prince Street, wanted to expand, and they needed more room. They also wanted to open a dental and medical school. And so there was a search done to find an appropriate location. Interesting, there was one location on Irondequoit Bay, but everybody felt that was too far to travel. So, anyway, the decision was made to move to make an offer to Oak Hill to take over its property. Believe it or not, in retrospect, you say it was a no-brainer, but at the time there were members who were very happy here and really didn't want to move. Okay, over the next, that was in 22. By 24, the deal was struck, and the university took over the property. I would think of a realtor here. I think I call this the greatest land swap in the history of Western New York, because the 90 acres and the 18 holes in this clubhouse was swapped for 355 acres in Pittsford, 2 Donald Ross courses, and the Tudor clubhouse that we all know so well. So that was in 24. They started building the courses here in 24. They were done by pretty much early 25. Everything was seeded. It was allowed to, the seed was allowed to grow and the fairways and greens mature. And meanwhile, the university is being built. And here are those 4, and here's the clubhouse, and you can see bunkers, and the members at the club continued to play right up until the end, and then, of course, the university took it over. But
where's the library building? Is that constructed up?
I believe that's this building right there. Yep.
Was it always called Oak Hill?
It was. From everything I've been able to read, there was a farm in that, part of the property was a farm, and it was called the Oak Hill Farm, and that's where the name came from. Yep.
That original picture that you, or one of the first pictures you showed where it shows the bend in the river and the original 9 holes, that's really where the park is, isn't it?
That's where what?
Isn't that where the park is now?
That's where the university is today. The U of R. Yep.
And so you say they swapped it, so it wasn't like they didn't buy.
It was a land. It was a land swap.
So did the people who wanted to have the university there buy the land in Pittsford for Oak Hill?
So as best we did a title search at one point in time on the property, and as best we can see is that there were a variety of farm in that area, but it was mostly farmed out by then. It was pretty barren, and it was from what I understand, George Eastman was very quiet about when he was purchasing property, because otherwise the price jumped. Yep. So anyway, that's where we were, and now we're going to move to Pittsford. And this is Donald Ross, who was a well-known architect, golf architect at the time. And interesting, going back to this picture for just a moment, this course, there is evidence that Donald Ross consulted on building the second 9, although I've only found one newspaper article that talks about it, and but also Walter Travis, who some of you may know about, also offered to do drawings. But anyway, it was Donald Ross that Oak Hill contacted, and he came and he walked the property before they closed the deal. And he declared it, just an excellent potential for a golf course, and that's what they did. And let's see. And so here we have. This is a diagram that Ross put together. The yellow is the west course, and whatever color that is, I'm a little colorblind. Looks gray to me. Is the east course, and here's the clubhouse. Okay, and yep.
That's his site plan?
Well, it's not a site plan. I mean, we have blueprints of the holes, but this was an overall drawing of what he imagined it to be. This was done in 24, so that's just as the course was being built, and it's very true to the course. The problem was, so we had this beautiful 2 Donald Ross courses, and we had this beautiful clubhouse, but we didn't have any landscaping. And as you can see, I mean, that's one of the earlier pictures of the club that we have. And, you think of Oak Hill as lush with trees and everything. That's the way it looked when it first opened. There were a couple failed attempts to do landscaping. Interesting, but failed. Here's a view from of the back of the clubhouse, and again you can see, other than that one elm tree on the extreme right, there's very little in the way of trees there. And here, this is a picture of 18. This is a little bit later on, probably, 19, I'm going to say early 30s. But again, this is 18, and you can see right up here is number 1, and then up to 2. But again, when you think of what the course looks like today, and then you see this, you realize, how much work went into developing the land. Dr. Williams, John R. Williams, was responsible for all of the landscaping that was done at Oak Hill. He was a retired physician. He retired at the age of 48. Not bad, was a very well-known physician, was the first physician in the United States to use insulin for diabetics. But anyway, he retired and became an arborist, an amateur arborist. And what he did, he lived on Monroe Avenue, and he wrote to other arborists all over the world and collected acorns and seeds. So he had acorns from Kew Gardens, from Sherwood Forest, from the Forest of Ardennes, from the Black Forest in Batavia. You know what I'm talking about, Bavaria, the Black Forest of Batavia. The cedars of Lebanon, he got seeds from there. My favorite, and also from Mount Vernon, he got acorns from the trees at Mount Vernon. But my favorite is the elm trees. He got the seeds from the tree below which George Washington in 1775 accepted command of the Continental Army. Wow. Pretty cool, huh? So Dr. Williams got these acorns, and everybody in the neighborhood gave him coffee cans, and he would sprout these acorns in coffee cans in his backyard on Monroe Avenue, and then bring them over. And he established a couple of nurseries and grew them. Somebody at one point in time asked him how many trees had he planted, and his response was, "I stopped counting at 30,000. So it gives you some idea. So this is an image from, again, about the early 1930s. You can see that you were starting to get trees, mostly evergreens, because they grow faster. But you can see hardwoods at a couple different places. So, for example, I love the old porches all the way around, and this was before the bowling alleys were put in. Here we are. Here we have it now. Again, this is from again a little bit better photograph, mid-30s. Again, the beautiful porches all the way around, but now you're going to start to see that the hardwoods are filling in. And here's a photograph from the mid-50s, I think 1957, 58, and just how beautiful the property was, and the back of the clubhouse. Okay, so now we've got the course landscaped, and along comes World War II, and one of the best known, and I think one of the most significant presidents of Oak Hill was a gentleman, Clarence Wheeler. And he was the president of the club during the Depression, and then again during the World War II era. And so again, think about the different things. He did a number of things to keep the club going during that era, one of which was the busing. Gas rationing was a big deal. And so they would take the bus to about where the city bus to where the corner of Kilbourne and East Avenue is now, and this was affectionately known as the hay burner, and everybody that would go up when the buses were scheduled to come, they'd take the two horses up and the wagon, load up the members, come down, they'd play and go back up that way.
Ask a question about that?
Yeah,
The men who are in the bus,
yeah,
are they coming to play golf
yes.
with their hats on and their suits?
Hey, that was the look, you know, I mean, well, no, but they would go into the locker room and change into their golf clothes.
Yeah.
No, that's, you know, there was a time when everybody wore a hat, you know.
No kidding.
Oak Hill, Clarence Wheeler, the president at the time, was really ahead of his time in a lot of ways. But, you know, he said for Oak Hill to survive, and for Oak Hill to survive during bad times, such as the Depression or World War II, when most of the men were gone, we need to become a family club. We need to be more than just a golf club. And so one of the early swimming pools was put in 1941, just before the war began. And that's the original site of the swimming pool, just off just behind 13 green and 1 tee. And the other thing they did is they put in 8 lanes of bowling. And so it was not only more family-oriented, but it was also year-round activity. So people were coming not just in the summer to play golf, and still the bowling league is a huge event on Wednesday night. This is one of my favorite pictures. Who wants to guess who the general manager is? Yeah, the lady. That's Ruth McKinnon. And Ruth McKinnon was the first general manager of a major golf club in the United States. And she was the club general manager. She was the top person from the early 30s into the early 50s. And when she retired, she was made an honorary member. And when you think of approaching the club, when you're coming up Chapin Way and then you open up and you see the club and you see that beautiful weeping, it's a copper beech. That's the tree that's dedicated to Ruth McKinnon. Mm-hmm. And which is, in my opinion, the most dominant tree, you know, I mean, it's the tree everybody sees.
Did she play golf?
I'm sorry?
Did she play golf?
You know, I don't know. She was made a member, but you know, she was a restaurateur. I mean, that's what she did when she retired. She opened a restaurant with her husband. This is the reason I have this in here. Well, number one, you can see the swimming pool, okay, and I want to. This is the 13th green, which we now call and is known as the Hill of Fame. And the Hill of Fame is the area that really runs from the creek, Allen's Creek, all the way up and around the Hill of Fame and back down again. And this would be probably a good time to stop and talk a little bit about, I'm going to jump around, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Dr. Williams, when he was planting all these trees and buying seeds and seedlings, needed a way to raise money. And one of the ways he raised money, he had an idea, and he would create plaques, okay? And the plaques would commemorate a person or an event, usually members or maybe a family member who had passed, whatever. And for a small fee, a plaque would be attached to one of the trees. And it was always on Decoration Day, and they had a little ceremony, and they sing "God Bless America" and the tree, the plaque, and that's really how he financed a lot of the work. And I'm going to talk more about the Hill of Fame in just a minute, but I wanted you to see what that.
This picture was from?
I'm sorry?
When was this picture from?
I'm going to guess this picture was from based upon the size of the trees, maybe the late 50s. Okay.
Starting to get bigger.
I'm sorry?
Starting to get bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep. This is that same hole today, which
Is
is,
it still called the Hill of Fame?
it sure is.
So
So,
we might recognize that?
yeah, well, this is the 13th fairway and green, and each hole has a name, and this is the Hill of Fame is the 13th, and is our signature hole. And so from here all the way up and around back down, the trees have plaques on them. When this work was done, the course renovation that we went through in 2019, there were trees along here that had to come down in order to make sure that the greens had sufficient sunlight. And so that was a bit painful. But the Hill of Fame is unique in that while there are some members that are on the Hill of Fame, most of the inductees are individuals who have a relationship to golf, but at the same time added something to, I think the term was a human uplift, the first Hill of Fame induction was done in 1956, and Dwight Eisenhower, the president, the golfer president, and Bobby Jones and a number of other people were inducted into the Hill of Fame.
So was that campaign that, is it Dr. Williams, would send out letters maybe to the president or to organizations to get people interested?
Yeah, Dr. Williams was the first chairperson of the Hill of Fame. And so he would reach out and explain the purpose. It's a way to honor people, and that, we wanted Eisenhower didn't attend because he had a heart attack that time. It wasn't our letter that did it, though.
I was just curious, in what way did you keep the honor that, if you decided to fell some of those trees, that you kept that honor for whoever that tree was for?
The way it's done is that there are now multiple plaques on some of the trees, and they're grouped, the women champions, the local great amateurs, the big three, Palmer, Nicholas, and Player. So, those are, there's a system to it, but, the only choice we really had was either to put multiple plaques or to expand the Hill of Fame to include other areas around the clubhouse. And for now, we're happy with it being in multiple plaques on trees. Yep.
Peter, may I ask a question?
Yeah,
There is a historic marker on Oak Hill. Where is it?
there's a number of historic markers.
There is one that was put on by the Town of Pittsford.
I don't know where it is, or maybe you need to give me a hint.
I shall.
Yeah.
It is a blue and yellow historic marker.
Oh, and the Denonville, the Marquis de Denonville, yeah. Yeah. So I wrote an article about that a number of years ago, and I entitled it Parlez-vous Français? Because, it was because of the efforts of Denonville, and we're getting a little far afield, but Irondequoit Bay and that whole area during the 1600s was extremely valuable for beaver and other animal pelts. That was, and so of course, it was the Iroquois nation lived there, and that it was their land. But the French were encroaching, and things got a little, greedy, I guess, is the best way to say it. And so the Indians fought back against the French, and then the King Louis the something sent 4,000 troops plus to this area to kind of teach the Indians a lesson, which they did. But the Indians saw them coming a long ways away, and obviously, discretion being the better part of valor, they let them come through. There was a big Indian settlement, and still is, in Ganondagun, which and also in the Mendon area. And so, unable to find Indians to kill, what they did instead was destroy all their housing, kill all the cattle, destroy all the food stocks for the winter. This was in the fall, and left the Indians to starve to death. The Indians ended up hating the French so badly that it really created both an economic and a political vacuum, which the English immediately filled. And so the final, the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City is where the final battle happened to be, where France ceded that land to the English, which is why we speak English and not French.
But the marker, where is the marker?
The markers along this creek. I don't know that I have a picture of it,
Okay.
but it's along what is now the 6th green, and yep. But it's there. Yep. Thank you. Okay, back to plaques. So the genesis. This is Charlie Coe. And I'm going to jump around a little bit. 1949, the United States Amateur, first really big tournament Oak Hill ever hosted. And Charlie Coe, who was one of the great amateurs of all time. I mean, 6-time low amateur at the Masters, almost came within a stroke in 1961 of winning the Masters. Gary Player won it by a stroke. I mean, he competed, he was low amateur in the Masters in 4 decades, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Think about that,
Just had a professional career, never went pro.
No, he was an amateur his whole life, yeah. Story goes as, well, I'm not going to get,
There's a few of them out there.
yeah, there are. But this is Dr. Williams, and he dedicated this tree to Charlie Coe in 1949. And then shortly thereafter, he also dedicated a plaque to the Walker Cup team, which the week before had been playing in the Walker Cup matches. And the way it works is that because they're amateurs, they don't want to have to pay to travel twice. So they always line up the Walker Cup the week before the amateurs. And same thing is true going the other way when our players go to the UK. So anyway, this plaque, and this is really the genesis of the Hill of Fame. And amongst Oak Hill members and people, the Hill of Fame is hallowed ground. I mean, it is really, really hallowed ground. I mean, there is no greater honor that the club can give someone than to induct them on the Hill of Fame. That's our Congressional Medal of Honor, if you will, And this is the genesis. Here's the list of the 47 inductees. Jim Nance will be inducted this coming Wednesday. There are a number. There's a gentleman in the room today whose name is up here. I won't embarrass him, but these are, you know, I mean, if you look at it, one of the things that strikes me is you have Dwight Eisenhower, Walter Hagen, Babe Saharias, Francis Ouimet, Chick Evans, Jack Nicklaus, I mean, Gerald Ford. It's not just golfers. It's primarily golf, but it's people who've added something to the uplift of our society. And this is an example of a plaque today. And Tom Watson was inducted in 2013 during the PGA Championship then. This is just, I just included this because it's one of my favorite pictures, and I'll tell you why. In my mind, this is the greatest foursome that ever walked Oak Hill's property. Ben Hogan, Byron Nelson, Sam Snead, Jimmy DeMeritt. Between these four men, they have 254 professional tour wins and 24 major wins. While Dr. Williams was putting plaques on trees, he was also putting them on benches. Yeah. But the benches unfortunately didn't stand up as well as the trees. I just love that picture because to me that's, you know, they're the greatest. That's the greatest foursome. Now, somebody could argue with me, but that's fine. This is my choice.
About what year would that be?
Okay, that's a good question. It's 1947. Yeah, and they were here for following the war, there were a number of exhibitions or quasi-tournaments to raise money for European relief, pay off the war bonds, and that sort of thing. Okay, now I'm going to move into a little bit of the tournament history. And again, as I've done before, I'm going to start way back at the beginning. So the club, the East Course, or the club as we know it, opened in 1926. Tommy Armour came and did an exhibition in 27, but that wasn't really. This is the inaugural New York State Women's Amateur Championship. And it was held in 1930. That's Maureen Orcott and Helen Hicks. Orcott was an amateur her whole life and New York Times reporter. Hicks was one of the first female golf professionals. She was one of the original 13 to form the LPGA. And Helen Hicks won, by the way. Oak Hill donated the cup to the Women's New York State Amateur, and it's still called the Oak Hill Cup. So that was 1930. Now we're going to move ahead to 1934. This is Walter Hagen. Look at these. Look at the elm trees. I mean, aren't they just spectacular? Unfortunately, they're all gone. But yeah, well, Dutch elm disease. Yeah. So this is Walter Hagen teeing off on number one, and in 1934, Oak Hill hosted the Hagen Centennial. It was the 20th anniversary of Walter Hagen's first U.S. Open win at Midlothian, and the centennial of Rochester's incorporation. To me, this tournament is really one of the most important because it was Hagen's tournament, and he invited all his buddies to come play. Well, who were Walter Hagen's buddies? The finest golfers in the world at the time. So this was when they first, really world-class golfers first came and really saw the East Course and played the East Course.
And what brought him here for that? What brought him here for that?
Walter Hagen?
Yeah, what brought him here?
Well, he was born and raised in Rochester. Yeah, so in Corbett's Glen is where he was raised. He was and he at the country club and he was a caddy and then an assistant professional and then a professional. Then he won a U.S. Open and, you know, but this was home. And so that, yep. And good question, though. So anyway, that's 1934. And to me, it's like all of a sudden a window opened and the world saw the East Course. Then in 1941, so, Oak Hill really got I think there was an energy that came out of 34. And in 41, Frank Gannett, who was also a member at Oak Hill and founder of Gannett News, now USA Today and the rest of it, put up $5,000 for the Times Union Open, Times Union being the evening newspaper in Rochester. And I believe this is Craig Wood. I know that's Ben Hogan and Sam Snead. Snead won, and it's a great picture because Hogan's reaching over trying to grab the winner's check, which he would do the next year. So that was in 41. In 42, here we have Hogan winning. And the 42 was almost not held because of the war. People were really of two minds. Do we live our lives and the way we would, or do we not because men are dying overseas? The decision was made to host the tournament. Ben Hogan, opening round, shoots a 64. That is the club, that course record that stood until 2013 when Jason Duffner shot a 63. And think about it for a minute. How many, athletic or sports records last 71 years? Now, Curtis Strange will tie it in 1989. But so that's 41, and this is 42. And then there was a little hiatus because we were in a war, and an awful lot of the guys were not around to play. This is a list of the major championships. I didn't quite know where to put this in the slideshow, but you can see 49 was the U.S. Amateur, and then in 56 we hosted our first U.S. Open. Well, here's 49. This is Charlie Coe hitting out of a bunker. I love the way his trousers drape. I mean, it's such a classic from the 40s, isn't it? But yeah, but in people, the amateur is still a very, very significant tournament championship. Make no mistake about it. But in this era, it would have been still considered a major championship. Bobby Jones, when he won the quadrilateral, the Grand Slam, he won the British Open, the U.S. Open, the British Amateur, and the U.S. Amateur. So those were the four major tournaments.
What's the difference between an open and an amateur?
An amateur, only amateurs can play. An open, anyone who can qualify can play. Yep.
Maybe look their ties by then.
I'm sorry?
No longer wearing a tie.
No, not wearing a tie, but a really nice sweater. And I love those trousers. But anyway, 56, the USGA came back 6 years later, and this is Dr. Middlecoff, Kerry Middlecoff, who won at Oak Hill. And, well, he won in the U.S. Open in 49 and then came to Oak Hill, and in 56 he won the U.S. Open at Oak Hill. It was Ben Hogan's, I think, really last serious try at winning a fifth U.S. Open. And on the last day, on the 17th hole, he missed a 30-inch putt, and which gave Middlecoff the championship. Middlecoff earned it, but still. then there was 12 years later, and we're hosting the 1968 U.S. Open. There's Lee Trevino, his first real major tournament, his first win was he won the big one, the U.S. Open. That's Jack Nicklaus admiring the trophy. There are a lot of great stories about Lee Trevino, but I'm going to shift just a little bit and set up what happened next. So this was in 1968. Oak Hill now has hosted, 3 major tournaments, and there's a real flavor. We're really enjoying it. And so the club, invited the USGA to host another U.S. Open. And I should have prefaced it that Trevino was the first player to win a U.S. Open with all 4 rounds in the 60s, which had never happened before. That combined with all the Dutch elm, the Dutch elm trees being gone, it kind of filtered back to Oak Hill that perhaps the USGA wasn't sure that the East Course was of championship caliber, U.S. Open caliber.
What time of the year were the games usually played?
They've changed, but this would be June.
It would be June.
Yeah. So, I think it would be the Masters, the U.S. Open, the British Open, and then the PGA. That's the normal routine, although it's shifted around a little bit. So anyway, it came back that there were folks who thought that maybe Oak Hill East wasn't of championship caliber. And, this bothered the leadership because we're having a lot of fun. We want to do this more, And so George and Tom Fazio were brought in to make some changes to the course, which they did, in part to relieve some choke points that happen when you have a whole lot of spectators, but also to, if you will, muscle up the East Course. And they were successful. And in 1980, we hosted the 1980 PGA. That was the first PGA Championship. We didn't get the Open, but we got the PGA. And after 72 holes of golf, the only player out of the whole field under par was Jack Nicklaus. So the whole question of whether or not the East Course was a significant challenge went out the window. Yeah.
I know the PGA typically kind of tries to go in and master, or not the PGA, but the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
Typically, they always try to make it obscenely harder. And so I'm just curious on kind of the flop from the U.S. Open to the PGA Championship. If there's any, posturing or course design or the layout or the course conditions, what went into that?
Well, both organizations, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but both organizations basically take control of the course roughly a week to 2 weeks in advance. So they're the ones setting up the course. It's not our greens people and our greens committees are fulfilling what they want, but we're not doing it. And so that's really how they set up the course. Yep. So,
Would that have been the case when Lee Trevino won?
yeah, I think it would have been. I don't know that it wasn't. Let's put it that way. But anyway, so the whole question of whether or not the East Course was of championship quality went out the window. But it went out the window at a certain price, and that price was that 3 holes, 5, 6, and 15, that the Fazios really dramatically changed didn't have the Donald Ross look and feel. So I'm not a great authority on golf architecture, but people who are can say that's a Ross course, or that's a so-and-so, can see it. And so, I heard somebody say once, it's like seeing somebody wearing striped pants and a plaid shirt. It just didn't fit. And I make the argument, I say, listen, if the goal was to host more major championships, this was an enormous success, the work that the Fazios did. If it was to host major championships and have a course that all 18 holes look like Donald Ross, well, then not so much. But after 1980, Oak Hill has hosted a significant, if not major championship every 5 years. And we'll see it in a minute. This is 80, and then in 84 it was the U.S. Senior Open. 89 was the U.S. Open again. 95 was the Ryder Cup. 98 was a U.S. Amateur. 03 was a PGA. 08 was a Senior PGA. 2013 was another PGA. 19 was another Senior PGA. 2023 will be a PGA. And in 2027 we're going to host another U.S. Amateur. So if the goal was to host major championships, it was an enormous success. The work that was done in 2019, the restoration of the course, will now, and that's why I wrote an article for the RBJ, and I said, I think this tournament, because it set the stage for major tournaments forever afterwards, was critical to Oak Hill's history. And I believe 2023 will be, again, I fully expect that it will. And I fully expect that the professionals are going to have all they can handle with that East course and set us up for now a course that is of major championship caliber and a beautiful Donald Ross look and feel. Yeah.
Specifically because of Andrew's work?
Yeah, well, Andrew Green was the architect that did that work. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But you're saying that the work that changed what was going on is attributing to.
Well, there was a whole committee, but he was and Jeff Sluman, who's a member and does some golf architecture work, and Andrew Green were brought in to be the professional eyes and ears, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Here we are, Miller Barber, 1984. Yeah. You wouldn't know this is a golf course, would you? This was 1989, and the rains that happened. I think the real story, though, is the way the golf communities all over Western New York came together. All of the grounds crews came up and volunteered, and made the course playable, and play went on. But it doesn't look much like a golf course up there, does it?
What was the penalty?
I'm sorry?
What was the penalty?
Yeah, what's the penalty? The idea is to put the ball in the boat. During '89, another significant event was on the third day of play, within the first 33 groups in the first 2 hours of play, 4 gentlemen each had a hole-in-one on number 6. And the odds of that happening are truly remarkable. Prior to that, in all U.S. Opens, there had only been 17 holes in one. And here we have 4 on one hole on one day. And a mathematician calculated the probability is 410 quadrillion to 1. Okay? And a couple of years ago, there was the agronomist, there was a championship agronomist named Tim Morrigan, and he was a USGA guy here in '89. And right after play, he went over and he took the flag off the number 6, and put a replacement flag up. And over the years, he had all 4 of those guys sign it. And about 3 years ago, I got a phone call from him saying, I have something that really belongs at Oak Hill. And he gave us that flag, which we've now framed with this photograph and some information about how it happened. Yeah.
Was that the original 6?
No, it was not the original 6. It was the 6 that the Fazios put in. Yeah. And Morrigan tells the story. He was there with one of the championship directors from the USGA, PGA Boatwright, and they were setting the pin locations and walking. And this was on number 6, had a lobe on the front right, and it created something of a funnel. And walking away, one said to the other, "That could be a hole-in-one." And the other replied, "That could be more than one hole-in-one." And so,
Who were the players?
okay, I'm not sure who's who, but it's Nick Price, Mark Wiebe.
Jerry Pate.
Thank you. And who's the 4th one? It'll come to me before we're done.
That's all right.
Wiebe,
I can look it up on Google.
Pate, yes, you can. Nick Price, I'm blanking on the last one. If I stop trying, it'll come. Here's Curtis Strange accepting the U.S. Open trophy. The '95 Ryder Cup. It was heartbreaking to lose, but sometimes for the better of the whole, I think it kind of revitalized the European teams and kept the competition going. But why did it have to happen here? This is another one of my favorite shots. This was at the end of the second day or the third day, and Corey Pavin chips in off the back of the 18th green, and that 18th green is very severe, and to come out of the rough and to hold his chip is just, and you can sort of see the look in his eye right now, and in the films when he walks, he's just so focused, so concentrated.
The chairs in the background.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
people.
Looks like they ate the rough the following day.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. I was there, and that roar, you just felt it. Your body just shook. 1998 United States Amateur, Hank Keeney. 2003, Sean McKeel. I hope you can see it, but that's where his second shot ended, and and he went on to win.
75 or 80, 175.
175. There's a plaque in the fairway where he hit from. Yeah, and then here's Sean McKeel with the Wanamaker Trophy. Jay Haas with the 2008 Senior PGA. And with this victory, Oak Hill became the first, and I believe still the only club in the country to host all 6 men's major tournaments that rotate. That would be the U.S. Open, the Senior Open, the U.S. Amateur, the PGA, the Senior PGA, and the Ryder Cup. Yeah. This is just a view of the crowd on number 1 during the 2013. Jason Duffner winning and setting the course record of 63. I can make excuses, but he played great golf. And then this is Ken Tanagawa, who won the senior PGA in 2019. It's big, yeah. Yeah. And then, here we are, 2023, and who's going to win,
Which hole do you think will play the most difficult? There's been some redesign.
I'm betting the new number 6. I don't know, but it's a 500-yard par 4 with the Allen's Creek down almost the whole right-hand side, and then you have to cross the creek to get to the green, which slants slightly towards the water.
As far as the crossing from the box, doesn't the creek cross the new 6th?
Yes,
How far is that crossing from like the tee box?
from the tee box.
Where they'll be playing?
Yeah, well, it's
Clearable?
no, that's no, that'll be, it crosses where they'll be making their second shot.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So I don't know about you folks, but my heart says Rory's going to win, and my head says John Rahm is going to win. I don't know, but anyway, we'll see. So that's my talk. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer.